he answers to his schools and his conference, and he doesn't want lectures from other conference commissioners about good of the game.
There's a difference between self-interest and enlightened self-interest. It is actually in your enlightened self-interest to not do something that so egregiously harms.
It's quite the words to live by in Game of Thrones. And let's be honest, it's the state of college football right now, even for the Power Four, where you have the ACC and the Big 12 taking what they can to survive because the SEC and the Big 10 are running things. And get out of here with for the good of the game. This is about monetary gain, not for the good of the game. And if you want a piece of the pie, you got to be a part of whatever the SEC and the Big Ten want to do, point blank, period.
Yeah, and everybody believes now that the King Joffrey, for your Game of Thrones reference, is Greg Sankey. That it's this tyrannical, I'm going to destroy the sport, annihilate everyone in my path type leader of all of college football, and I just don't think that's true. He's one of the two most powerful people in college football. It's him, and it's Tony Petitti from the Big Ten. The Big Ten hasn't really spoken much about this yet. They haven't had their meetings. They haven't been in front of microphones and answered questions about it. I'm willing to bet they sound a lot like Greg Sankey whenever they end up discussing this for the first time. I went on a radio show in Pennsylvania today, and they wanted to treat the SEC like the all-encompassing conqueror Viking of college sports that will destroy everything to its core across the country because they're hell-bent on ruining the sport. I don't agree that the best way forward is to combine the Big Ten and the SEC into some superpower and leave out the ACC and the Big 12 and not have much of a West Coast presence and really not go coast to coast that much with the teams and do all that. I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I like college football the way it was for the last 75 years, where it's more conference affiliation. It's more geographically focused upon rivalries and groupings of teams and all of that. And I'm not defending Greg Sankey or anyone. I'm just simply stating what Greg Sankey is stating when he says, I don't want to hear lectures about good of the game.
Yeah.
Greg Sankey is employed by the 16 member institutions of the Southeastern Conference to do their bidding. He is looking out for number one. He is a businessman. So if the sport is headed in this direction, and he knows that he has the best hand that's been dealt to him, and the Big Ten has a pretty damn good hand too, that they've been dealt to them, they're not going to be preached to by the guy sitting there with a 9 as the high card in the 5-card draw in the ACC and the Big 12. They don't have anything right now. There's no negotiating power. There's no leverage with those two conferences. So, Hutton, going back to your Game of Thrones reference, everybody wants to make Greg Sankey out as the villain, and maybe he ends up being the villain, but all Greg Sankey is doing is looking out for the SEC.
Right, and all the ACC and the Big 12 are doing are the exact same thing.
Yes.
For their own conferences. They're not the only ones upset. Congressman Brendan Boyle from Pennsylvania, House of Representatives, he posted this earlier. Let me state this as clearly as I can. The Big Ten and SEC should be very, very careful about some of the decisions they're about to make because they appear hell-bent on ruining major college football. I think they need congressional hearings into their collusion. And the man behind that post joins us now here on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow, Congressman Brendan Boyle. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, good to be with you guys.
So is the frustration on the post as evident as it seemed as we just saw on the screen?
Yeah, no, that's still the way I feel. And, I know that anytime a member of Congress or someone with the government offers an opinion on sports, there's always going to be someone who pushes back, who basically says, you have no role, stay out of it. What the hell are you doing? I would remind you that it is the SEC and the Big Ten and others in college athletics who have spent the last several years coming to Congress wanting us to fix their NIL issue. They're the ones who've been coming to us saying they need an antitrust exemption. So don't be surprised when you've been coming to Congress for years and years now and still want that legislation passed. don't be surprised if those of us who are pretty big college football fans and actually follow this stuff are going to turn around and say, hey, wait a minute. Seems to me the biggest issue is actually not NIL. The biggest issue right now is the way two super conferences, after having raided a couple other conferences over the last several years, are now turning around and attempting to preemptively rig the college football playoff, which is in and of itself a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Congressman, I'm going to give you some credit right here, because normally when politicians dive into the sports world, a lot of times it's very transparent as to what they're doing, right? Their constituency is comprised of X fan base, and this fan base got screwed by this officiating or this decision for the playoff. So I'm going to launch an investigation into this group, or we all see it, right? You're a Notre Dame guy. You're a Notre Dame grad. So actually with the new system, your school benefits from it because now they could get the bye where they couldn't before. So you're legitimately, I feel like, looking at this, and this is your opinion on it. And I don't think it's coming from I'm from this state or this area, so I see this as a problem for my voting block. It feels like this is different with you, is it?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it's, what you said is 100% accurate. I do appreciate that, people online are always or almost always at their worst. And some of the people from, SEC country were pushing back on me. A lot of them brought up the fact that I'm a Notre Dame alum, like they were Columbo and they just uncovered, some great revelation. Like, it's in my bio. I'm not exactly hiding it. If you follow me on Twitter or social media, I opine a lot on the sports teams which I support, which happen to be Philly sports teams and Notre Dame. But I'm an honest and independent actor when it comes to this. And the college football system right now, actually, Notre Dame is kind of held harmless regardless of how the remaining spots among the other conferences are divvied up. For Notre Dame, it's pretty straightforward. Right now, you finished ranked in the top 12, you're in. You're not ranked in the top 12, you're out. If they go to 14, then it would be the same. You have to be ranked in the top 14, the same with 16. That would be the case whether 6 SEC teams get in or 3 or, somewhere in between. I just look at it as someone who has been a diehard college football fan basically my entire life, who actually always wanted a college football playoff. I'm glad that we finally got there. The format I liked, I think probably every fan had their own devised format. Mine was always an 8-team format, but I think 12 is great. I think last year was phenomenal. I love the on-campus games. I thought that was the best aspect of it. So they've done a lot of things really well the last couple of years. And now, after only 1 year, and everyone being happy that if finally you got it right, they're about to screw the thing up and try to preemptively rig it. So that's the part that has me, really not happy and trying to push back on this because I'm in a position in which I can potentially make a positive difference here.
Well, let's speak on that. So how do you push this forward if you're as passionate about it? And other people will be joining you on this too, especially Big 12 and ACC fans. What's the next step if you wanted to take that next step?
Well, look, I have gotten a lot of outreach ever since my social media post a couple days ago from some folks who are in higher education. I keep those conversations private out of respect to them, but they are aware that they very much need Congress when it comes to the NIL issue, a number of other issues related to the kind of relationship that will exist now and in the future between universities and their what used to be called student athletes. I'm not even sure if that's the right term anymore.
Yeah.
So they are aware that they need Congress, and that those of us who actively follow this are paying attention, and that this would probably not be a wise idea. The other thing I say to them is to the SEC and the Big Ten, let it play out on the field. You are going to get, I would bet that over the next 10 years, if they go to 16, over the next 10 years, each of those two conferences is going to get at least 4 teams in, I would say 9 out of the 10 years, if not 10 out of the 10 years. So why do you do this? Why are you taking on all of this grief? You've united so many people against you. just stop. Do not go down this path. And I'm actually hopeful that they're going to pull back from the brink. I will say this, to Greg Sankey's credit, he was one of the four folks. It was Sankey, Jack Swarbrick at Notre Dame. I think Bowlesby was the commissioner of the Big 12 at the time, and Craig Thompson at the Mountain West. When they put together the 12-team playoff, you had examples where Sankey actually did something that maybe was contrary to the interests of the SEC. Jack Swarbrick at Notre Dame said, look, Notre Dame will not be eligible for one of the first-round buys in order to solve the issue that Notre Dame doesn't play a conference championship. That was a great example of folks coming together and actually acting in a way that was for the greater good. We need a little bit more of that spirit again.
And that was going to be my follow-up question, Congressman, is if you're Greg Sankey and you're the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, he's been unapologetic that he answers to his schools and his conference, and he doesn't want lectures from other conference commissioners about good of the game. Is there a responsibility to the commissioner right now of the SEC and the commissioner of the Big Ten to look out for what's best for all of college football? Or are they simply there to look out for their, number one, their own conference, and they don't need to answer to anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Greg Sankey, it is true. He is not the commissioner of college football. He is the commissioner of the SEC. But what I would say to him, or really to anyone else, is there's a difference between self-interest and enlightened self-interest. It is actually in your enlightened self-interest to not do something that so egregiously harms college football that you actually diminish the product for years to come. So act not in your self-interest, narrow self-interest, act in your enlightened self-interest. It is in the SEC's interest, the Big Ten's, all of these conferences, that we have as fair and as legitimate a process as possible, because that will win you more fans, which means you get more revenue.
What would you say to the ACC and the Big 12, who I compared it to Game of Thrones? In the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die. Right. Bending the knee is another reference that we've made in the past. Taking less in order to be a part of the pie.
Well, I mean, hopefully for the ACC and Big 12, this won't turn into the Red Wedding episode.
No doubt.
If we're going to carry the analogy through.
Yes.
Look, I think the ACC and the Big 12 and a number of those universities are at real risk the way this is all headed. It's hard to see, and I don't want to pick on any one university, so I'm just using this as an example before people tweet at me. But Wake Forest comes to mind. It is... If we really are moving toward this two super conference or one super league model, boy, I mean, the institutions within the ACC and the Big 12 face some real risk. And I have to say, I fear that future coming along. I really don't think it would be in the best interest of college athletics and the best interest of the players and fans.
Man, I hope Congress can do something about NIL, and I personally, I hope the players have a voice in that discussion. I still haven't seen that. That's the other part of it is I get the sense a lot of these business decisions are taking place now, a year after, planning ahead. That way it's kind of locked in, grandfathered in, so to speak, in case we do see a CBA or in case we do see a player union. Again, that's just a guess there. But I think they're trying to put the cart before the horse for monetary reasons, and the players don't really have a voice in any of this.
It does seem to me that at some point when you're talking about the transfer portal, when you're talking about the cap, when you're talking about some of these collectives and, what rules of the road are there in which players could get taken advantage of because they're promised something by a collective and then that collective suddenly disappears overnight. When you think of the myriad issues involved, boy, at some point, if there can be deemed a players association that sits across the table from these universities, it sure seems like that would be a better way to go than lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, and some federal judge in some district who might not know the difference between the NIL and NCAA suddenly making these judgments.
So you're a big Philly sports fan. Were you ready to take some sort of action against the NFL if they voted out the tush push and didn't decide to keep it in?
Well, it was funny. I was on a very political podcast last week, and it was talking about tax bill that was moving through Congress. But I got asked toward the end of that interview about the NFL possibly banning that. And I went off on like a 10-minute tirade, and the person said to me, "Boy, you weren't as fired up about the legislation we were talking about as you are now." And hey, I am biased. I'm totally a pro Philly sports fan. So you can discount what I'm going to say, but I just think it is so weak for the other NFL teams attempting to ban this to do it right after the Eagles won the Super Bowl. I mean, beat them on the field. Also, if that play, if it were so easy, why aren't the other 31 teams having success with it? If Buffalo would have had success with that play last year in the playoffs, they may well have been all the way in the Super Bowl. So it's not exactly as easy as maybe Jalen Hurts and the Eagles' offensive line makes it out to be.
I'm with you. Chad would echo that too. I mean,
well, that answer, you can be a guest on our show anytime. That was great. And Jerry Jones came out and said it and was honest. I hate the Eagles.
Yeah.
So I wanted to vote against it because I don't like my competition in the division having any type of advantage.
I hate the way they're going about it with the injury point of view. With that's not there either. But they're trying to say, for the health and safety of the players. That's also a load of BS when it comes to the reasons
I will
why.
say I have been impacted both ways by this play. I was actually 20 years ago at the original Bush push, which then was illegal in college football. USC should have been flagged, should have lost the game. It was the last play of the regular season, or last play of regulation, and they would have lost. When Notre Dame almost upset what was then number 1 USC. So having experienced that play causing much heartache, I'm glad that 20 years later I could at least see that play benefit the Eagles winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Hey, great visit. Thanks for the perspective and the ability to jump on and talk some sports. Hopefully, even though you don't like the details, maybe it's an escape for you a bit.
Yeah, this has always been sports for me. It is an escape from the real world and certainly the stressful job I have. It is funny the last couple of years the way my day job and my escape have sort of been merging a little bit. But I just think and the last thing I'll say in this, and I'm obviously from Philly. I'm from very much a pro sports town, but I do think college football is just such a part of the cultural landscape of this country. I do feel like we all have a certain pressure on us to make sure we don't ruin this really special and sacred thing.
Well said. I mean, as long as Saturday feels the same to me, it's not affecting me yet, and it still feels like a college football Saturday so far. So hopefully it stays that way. Congressman, thank you.
Many more to come.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. That's right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Great talking to you guys. Thanks.
There's Congressman Brendan Boyle.
Very well said by the congressman.
Agreed.
And certainly a very popular and important part of the American fabric on Saturdays. A bigger discussion that we're going to continue to have is college sports is uniquely American. We're the only country in the world that does this. We're the only country in the world with something in place like a Title IX to give female athletes the same type of opportunities and to have the same amount of teams. And the opportunity cost of doing everything based on money. And I'll say this to Greg Sankey or Tony Petitti or anyone else. If you were just looking out for number one in the short term and only thinking about money, when we look ahead 5 to 10 years and you see the amount of sports that are going to be cut because they don't make money for the school and how many opportunities go to waste because you're not going to have scholarships in those sports anymore and you're going to have 4 sports on campus and not 14.
Right. Clubs.
That's a big problem that no one's looking at right now because they're too focused on, can I get 4 or 6 teams in the playoff in college football, right? That's something we got to guard against because it is uniquely American, and it's part of what makes this country so special.
And it is Game of Thrones. Even on the sports aspect, the different programs.
I love the red wedding metaphor that he used there, too. Hopefully it's not the red wedding.
Yeah. You have all the different sports playing the different wives of the old man.
Yeah, that's right. Let's put that meme together, shall we?
Might as well.
Sunbelt.
Hey, if
Being the young wife.
yeah, this is all.
Just all straight through. We get to pick out which wife is which conference.
Yeah, if you're enjoying the show, check out the OutKick YouTube channel. Hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe there. Get all clips, highlights, and more over at YouTube. Just search out OutKick.